to thank the Senior Center for making this space available. I think it's wonderful, all the work that's done in this place. I want to thank them. And I want to thank the Avenue to Wellness program and the people who really worked and created this series. And Doreen, who just spoke, Diane back there behind the camera, Ananda is in the back corner, Margie's sitting over here, and Jan helped to really create this program. So we're all really lucky to have this kind of opportunity in our small community. So I'm really grateful to be here for that. So as Doreen said, my name's Annie Waters, and I've been interested in food all my life. I ended up with a degree in food science and human nutrition, which was really more about working in a laboratory and being a technician than it was about learning to cook well. But it ended up, maybe we shouldn't put that on. It ended up with me teaching food, cooking, and working with nutrition in the context of how to cook. Because I think it's one thing to read books about nutrition and to want to change your life, and then it's another thing to actually know how to cook. Now, in this room are people from a generation who had food economics and learned to cook from their mothers, but when I teach my classes, quite often I'm in a room of really young people who have actually never cooked. They don't know anything other than microwave or frozen food. So tonight, you'll have to just bear with me since you probably have a lot of this information yourself, and you could teach this class. So I talked about stretching a chicken on my flyer. Was kind of a little novelty, and then, some other people made fun of me. I thought maybe I would just stretch a few. Oh! And you have to know how to do these things. Anyway, there they are. So I did stretch a chicken. We're done. Let's look at our handout on the local whole and seasonal food. And this is something I want to just address this handout here, which is a summary. And a few things stand out for me here. I love the idea of eating in a really great environment and having a beautiful meal. And we can do this for ourselves in our own homes. We just maybe don't think of it, don't take the time. But slow food means to encourage thoughtful conversation with each other, to have food that's been thoughtfully prepared, to chew slowly and to taste the essence of the food, like Italians would do. And when we think we go to Italy or to France to eat this incredible food, we have those foods too. So encourage you on slow food. I would really encourage you to buy organic foods and to grow foods in your garden, to take your diet as far as you can toward eating right off the earth for the best health of all. And eliminate those packaged products from most of your meals if you can. I have them in my house too, and I love opening a can of pozole and sticking it in my chicken soup. Not against that at all, but I think if we can eat, like tonight we have carrots from the hospital garden and so on and so forth, we really benefit from that type of eating. So, and especially with meat, I really want to encourage all of you to think about that the higher you are on the food chain with a food, the more important it is that it has had a good life, that it didn't have pesticides and chemicals in its diet, so that when it comes to you, it's not going to cause your own body to begin to store those toxins. So shop more often. Eat your food when it's really fresh. If you think you can't afford better food, maybe think about eating less of it. I'm going to teach you and talk about tonight about using smaller portions of meat. And cooking at home, you can always cook more than one meal at a time. I spent $16 on a chicken, but I ate it 8 times, right? Let's just talk about price. So I went to Safeway. I don't actually usually buy my chicken in Safeway, but I wanted to see what they have. And they still have the good old Rocky chickens they've had for years. This was my mainstay, really, chicken for 30 years. And it's from Petaluma, and it's no GMO feed, so it's a step up the ladder that way. And sustainably farmed, no hormones, free range, and no antibiotics. So this is a really good chicken bargain. This is only $2 a pound. It's $1.99 a pound at Safeway, a whole chicken. And I'm going to encourage you tonight to buy whole chickens, not chicken parts, even if you live alone, because you get so much value from the bones and from the different parts of the chicken than you get from a white breast meat, which doesn't have much good, positive fat in it. So the other kind of meat that Safeway had was Coastal Range Organics, and I bought a couple of chicken breasts to help you with this salad serving tonight. And this is organic vegetarian feed, so this is a really much higher quality fed chicken. It's free range, which I'm not going to go into that. It might not mean much, actually, free range. But so look for the word organic. If you can find someone who's growing chickens, that is the chicken you want. If there's a local person with chicken and you can get a hold of that, that's going to be the real thing. This half breast with ribs, we're going to pull the ribs off tonight, was $5.49 a pound. So you can see when you take, you get a jump in price. And a chicken breast with no bones on it starts being about $6 a pound, even for a Rocky chicken, and up to $8 or $9. So I want to encourage you to buy whole chickens, to take tonight's lesson to heart, and save money on your meat, but buy quality meat and use it wisely.
I just bought last weekend a whole chicken from Mariposa that was organic. It was $18.
Yeah, so that's about an average price for an organic whole chicken. This one was $9. It's literally half the price for Rocky, but it's not organic.
Right.
And we're just all doing our best. Whatever level of economy we can bring to it, I'm just encouraging you, especially with your meat, buy the absolute best meat you can afford, really. It'll make a big difference to your health over time. It's how we eat over time, mostly, that affects us, especially as we age. I want to talk about Grocery Outlet, basically, just a moment. That's a great place to get some bargains on organic foods. It's like a treasure hunt in there. You can find a few things if you look, and they always have this same coastal range organic meat there at a little cheaper price. So you can pick that up. They have organic celery quite often, and spinach, and organic chocolate. So it's a very good place. So yeah, you can pay $18 for chicken. You can pay $9. I would encourage you not to get anything more bargainy, really, in your meat. So we're going to talk about making your chicken last for more meals. And on your handout, we talked about local food. Really encourage you to buy this Petaluma grown chicken, or the Coastal Organics, which is from up north. It didn't come from New York State, all the way across the United States on a semi-truck belching fumes and, using up oil. So our food can be our medicine. That's really what we're here for tonight, about food as medicine. How can we embrace our diet in such a way, and our food in such a way, that we bring love to ourselves, that we keep ourselves as healthy as possible in a place where we want to be for our vitality. So food as medicine is a really great conversation that this book pursues, and I would encourage all of you to just look this book up. It's called Nourishing Traditions. Sally Fallon and the Weston Price Foundation are encouraging us to study the traditional foods of our ancestors and go back to look at how people ate and what was good about it and what we could do to provide for ourselves. We have so much knowledge now, so much more knowledge than people did 100 years ago. It doesn't mean we need to eat scientifically prepared foods. It just means we can bring science to what was really a genuinely understood, intuitive eating style from all over the world. She talks about diets from all over the world. The traditional peoples had certain ways that they ate. One of the things is that hardly anyone was a vegetarian. They ate meat. Coastal peoples had a lot of fish, and they were the healthiest people, it seems, and they ate little bits of meat. They didn't go eat big steaks. They didn't do that kind of thing. And when it comes to chicken, think about it. If you had a farm and you were raising chickens, you'd have to have 52 chickens to have one chicken a week, right? That's a lot of meat. That's a lot of, killing and harvesting of animals. So we're not sure that they had a chicken in every pot, but every Sunday. But it's something to examine our current drive for meat in this country. Big hamburgers I want to officially advise you to check with your doctor before you change your diet. I just want you to hear that from me. So I'm not advising people to change their diets because I said so. And I also want to, just not encourage you about special diets that you've read in a book or something of that nature, but to think about your genetic ancestors and what they ate, the foods you really love, because those foods will feed you well. In that context, though, I want to talk about lowering our carbohydrate levels in our diet, especially sugar, because we know so much about that now. The blood sugar swings that people experience and the need for an afternoon snack and a candy bar and all that. It just causes this kind of roller coaster of blood sugar. I come from a diabetic family. My sister is a third-generation diabetic, which is very unusual. And I'm avoiding it, I believe, with my attention to good quality fats and protein in my diet. I have a terrible sweet tooth. I definitely admit to being a carb addict. I will stand up at the meeting and say, yes, I'm a carb addict. But I'm working on it all the time and finding ways to fool myself. Putting a spoonful of coconut oil in with my soft-boiled eggs in the morning helps my blood sugar stay really level. Just things of that nature that you can do for yourself to help with those tendencies. Big question for all of you really is, are you willing and ready to make permanent changes in your diet and your lifestyle in order to have healthy remaining years in your life? And you're just going to answer that question anyway. You can, and tonight maybe some new piece of information, maybe that coconut oil tip is the one thing you'll take away from tonight, I don't know, but I really encourage all of you to ask yourself that question. Speaking of healthy fats and coconut oil, I do want to put a plug in for coconut oil, even though it comes from another long ways away. It is an amazing food that the people who have been eating coconut oil in their diets for centuries appear to have a great longevity. The women don't gain huge amounts of weight in their twilight years, and they have their joints are in good shape. They have their brains seem to be working really well. The jury's out on coconut oil and as a miracle food, but I'm using it to cook with. Coconut oil and ghee are pretty much the only fats I use now to cook with. Ghee is a refined butter. It's the same thing as clarified butter, the French call it. You take all the milk solids out, and the ghee lasts literally months without being refrigerated. It's a pure fat, and it's got a very high cook point, smoke point. So those two things are really wonderful for cooking, and I use raw olive oil on salads and for treats, and sometimes I cook in olive oil just because it's very Italian to do that. And so those are the kind of the oils I use, and I've chucked out all the mazzolas and the corn oils and all the other things. I don't want them around. I probably eat them when I go to a restaurant, but I try to avoid it. Okay, so now we're going to handle the chicken. You've probably been waiting for this part. So we'll talk about crock pots just after we've done with the chicken part. I cooked this chicken for tonight in the crock pot so you can see what that might be like. How many of you use crock pots already? Good. Does a crock pot cook in here?
I have found that the weight of that size crock pot now is too hard for me.
This is a huge pot. It's my favorite crock pot, and I don't even hardly ever move it. It's in a permanent location, and I do. It is heavy. You're right. So this is smaller, and especially if you're eating alone, you can use a smaller one. But I got a lot of chicken into this crock pot, so I cooked a whole chicken, as I told you, to encourage you to think about whole chicken. But I also cooked some chicken breasts in here. For us to easily tear up for our salads without you waiting for me to rip all this chicken apart for quite a while. So what we have here is some lovely white meat breasts from the Coastal Organics organic package.
Is that Coastal local?
It's from Humboldt, I believe.
Uh-huh.
I put rosemary on this just for fun and a little bit of what was it? Cajun seasoning. Earlier and I were talking before class about different seasonings, and you can do anything you want with chicken. It's like a blank palette just waiting for you to experiment with, and your meat can turn into Thai food, Mexican soup, pozole, whatever, depending on how you choose to treat it. So this white meat is just very simple. Now this is cooked to 180 degrees. I checked it before class. With a crock pot, I really suggest that you do check your meat temperature because it's a little, it's hard to tell when you're cooking something 5 to 7 hours where you're at. If you overcook it, it gets dry. If you undercook it, we all know chicken is not that good for us when it's undercooked. So I tend to use one of these.
What's the temperature you want?
180 degrees.
You actually stick it in the chicken?
I stick it right in the chicken, and I watch it go up. You can see it now moving and going up. Now, I turned this chicken off about 20 minutes ago. I don't know if it'll go up to 180. It might. So we're just going to make little pieces, and I'll let those ladies in the back try to figure out how to manage that for your salads. So here's our chicken from a deboned breast. This is something that everyone commonly buys a lot of. And I had 2 of those, and then I also bought one with the bone in. And we're going to take a look at this bone in because I'm going to pull the meat off it just to show you a little something about pulling meat off. Oh, and by the way, there's little red things coming up. This is sweet potato. What I do in the crock pot when I bake a chicken is I don't put any water in the bottom at all. We're going to roast it. It'll get more of a roasted flavor with no water. You can stew it. It's lovely to be stewed, and there are several books over there. That Not Your Mother's Crock Pot book is on the shelf there. Oh, here it is. Okay. This one has a lot of recipes for like stewing and poaching and stuff in the crock pot. But if you look up online, you can see slow cooker recipes for roasting chicken, and they do the same thing I did with no water. And it makes, if you come up here later, you can see there's 1.5 inches, 2 inches of broth that has been created in the bottom. And so I put potatoes under the chicken to lift it out of the bottom. Some of the recipes will say aluminum foil balls. That's just not something I'm going to do, is put aluminum in my food. So it's great to put potatoes in the bottom. They're so yummy when they're all kind of cooked in the chicken broth, right? So, okay, so let's take a look at the bones. So one of the things we're going to talk about, and I wrote it just into the handout. I didn't actually give you a complete handout on making stock or broth, but it's so simple, it's intuitive, really. What you're going to do is you're going to get your bones and your skin and all the parts of the chicken that you might not ordinarily eat, the stuff you'd leave on the edge of your plate. And you're going to use that to make broth and stock. So these cartilage bits, this is what is in your own joints. So how many of you are having like joint problems? So eating this actually helps your own cartilage to reheal and feed itself. So when you make stock broths and you boil this in the broth, especially I do a crock pot for several days, it melts into the water. You're not chewing gristle, but you're getting the benefits of it, right? From here to your own joints. So really want to encourage you to read this part about making the stock and broth and taking off all the meat if you want to before you start, so you can save all that out, because the meat loses its flavor as you cook it in the broth. It's no good sticking it in the broth that you're going to boil for a day or 3 days. So I take all this stuff off and I set it aside. I'm just starting a little bowl here. And I throw herbs in until I think I have too many, maybe. And there wasn't much bone here. They bragged about the bone, but there wasn't that much bone on this piece. And sometimes maybe the meat right next to the bone doesn't turn you on. It's okay to use it or not. So finding all my bones. And what I tend to do is keep a bag in my freezer. And as I'm eating meals and bones are happening off the table, I throw them in this bag in the freezer until I have a bag of bones. And then I make my stock, so you don't have to do it every single time. You can kind of take your chicken carcass and make it a little smaller by bending the ribs and just keep adding bones to that bag. You can put onion, outer leaves of onions in there. They actually will create flavor. The butt end of a stalk of celery that's very clean. things of that nature. They have lots of flavor, and they can go into your broth, because when you finish your broth, you're going to strain it, and you're going to remove all of that stuff. So, so what I have here is just a few bones and skin, and I started simmering some water earlier. So I'm going to pretend I have a big bunch of bones. We're making this bone broth, and we're going to put some herbs in. And again, it's up to you. I like rosemary, and so I'm putting some more of that in, and a few bay leaves. These are from our local bay trees. You can get the really wonderful Italian ones if you like, but actually these work great. They're strong, but they help with the flavor. And I harvested some hot peppers that were they were weird. They didn't dry well, but they're very hot, and this is the skin of those hot peppers. I'm going to throw some of those in. Again, because everything's going to be strained out, so you're not worried about the edibility of what you're putting in. You're more about getting the flavor out.
But is it going to be hot? Is it going to be spicy?
Yeah, it will. So you might not use those. You might choose to not use those kinds of things. I'm just going to say today we're going to do that, right?
Would you add the juice from that?
I would. So when I finish serving this, and if I had a big kitchen, I would just show you guys the whole thing. I'd lay this whole chicken out, and we would do the whole thing. Pat's been to one of those classes, I think. Did you put him on my chicken classes?
No.
Okay. So what I would do is lift this chicken out, and I would serve it to my family and my friends as a beautiful roast chicken meal with potatoes and beans or salad or whatever. Now you're eating a lot of meat that one night. You're just going to enjoy it. It's a feast. Then we start coming back to our chicken after dinner, and we got this piece left that nobody ate, and so we're going to start setting aside things and pulling meat off the bones and saving all the meat and putting the bones aside, and we take our pot with our broth, and you don't even have to move it if you did a crock pot, and we start putting all the bones back in here with more water, and I do two kinds of broth out of my chicken. This is a discovery I made a couple of years ago, and I like it. I do a 12 to 24-hour broth that is a very rich, wonderful chicken full broth that is hearty. It's the broth that you would all want to be drinking out of a cup. It's so good. Mm-hmm. And then I take all the bones and all the leavings and everything out of that broth. I put it back in with more water, and I save that broth out in a jar, or I use it right away in a soup where the flavor of the broth is really highlighted. And I fill my crock pot with more water, and I boil it for a few days. And because it's a crock pot, you don't have to watch it. You can boil it on the back of your stove. It's an ancient simmering broth on the back of the stove. Kind of, you can almost imagine your great-grandmother doing that. And then after a day or so, the bones begin to almost melt into the water. You take a chicken or a potato masher and you crush all the bones up. Now what you're doing is you're releasing calcium, magnesium, and phosphorus into the water in a way that it's going to become very, very assimilable in the body. And that continues to cook, and all of the mineral nutrients are now in that broth, and it's a very highly mineralized broth. It's medicinal. It's really good for people who are sick. It won't have the same flavor like that yummy gourmet broth that you made earlier, but it's really medicinal, and I encourage you to do your second boil on that.
Is that true of any bone, whether it's beef or fish? I mean,
fish usually won't stand up to a long cook. When I make salmon broth, I just cook it at 2 hours.
okay.
Yeah. Yes, beef and lamb bones and those big bones, they can cook for a really long time. You want to pull the marrow out and see if you can crush them. Quite often you can't actually even ever crush them. They'll stay pretty whole. But yeah, any meat will become a broth. Any bone will become a broth like this. And by the way, my meat is now only 130 degrees because it's been a long time since I turned it
I
on.
had heard adding a little bit of salt and vinegar to the second boil also then pulls even more out of the bones.
Yeah, I do add champagne. I don't know hearty, and the champagne was left, and so it's flat. As I tried to get somebody else to drink it, he said, no, it's flat. So you put vinegar, wine, or champagne, if you have it, into here. It helps pull out the calcium because the acids begin the calcium dissolving. But you don't actually really need wine in it. Yeah.
Is there any benefit from caramelizing those first in the oven?
Well, I hadn't thought about doing that because it's extra work. I'm also, as much as I love food and I love to cook, I'm kind of like also, how much do I want to turn my oven on? And I kind of weigh that. But it'll give you a different taste. And it will change the carbon aspect in nature and anything. It's all chemistry. So you're going to have some elements and some minerals which are going to shift from the caramelizing and from the heat of a dry heat. So I imagine there is a biochemical difference between a wet heat and a dry heat on your calcium in your bones. So I had a few things I wanted to say about broth and bone. So health benefits of chicken broth, they believe, especially homemade, we're talking homemade stock here, it boosts your immune system, aids digestion, increases efficiency of protein use, provides easily digestible minerals, including calcium. This is not on your chart. And can improve the symptoms of joint pain and ulcers, jaundice, inflammation, muscle spasms. These are all things that benefit from magnesium and calcium, particularly as the larger mineral nutrients, but you get a lot of also boron and all kinds of very colloidally suspended nutrient comes into your broth. So all kinds of mental things too. Insomnia, which loves, of course, we know magnesium can really help us sleep. Hyperactivity and anxiety, palpitations, all those things are helped from the magnesium in your chicken broth. So I really want to encourage you to buy whole chickens, to use them a number of times, and to end up with a stock pot of broth, which I got two of them going here because I still have my original broth and I have this one I'm starting. Yeah.
And do you do anything at all with chicken fat?
I just put it all in. The chicken fat, the Jewish grandmother chicken fat, which is very nutrient rich. I didn't put that on your handout, but I'm going to talk about it here. Where is that? The schmaltz. I couldn't find real definitive evidence for the schmaltz. I really wanted to bring that here tonight. But the best I can say is, the yellow globules are the schmaltz. They are an immune defense, and that's why your grandmother would give you that when you were ill. And when you think about that 80% of your immune system is actually in your digestive tract, so what we eat when we're sick is really important, or when people around us are getting sick. Our food intake is absolutely essential. I quit eating sugar whenever people around me are getting sick, and I haven't been sick all winter. And some people are sick for 3 weeks, and they have this cough that won't go away, and I really attribute it to garlic and chicken broth. I may be Jewish in my other life. It sounds very Jewish grandmother, doesn't it? So in the cartilage, I can't say enough about this because I have a lot of joint problems. I did martial arts for years, and I think I precipitated with a lot of injury. So I'm careful with my joints now, and I really recommend, as we looked at the cartilage. Yeah.
I don't know if you've read about this, but you can actually buy chicken feet. And
Yes.
it has a lot of what you're talking about concentrated in the chicken feet.
Yes.
You're right, and it's beautiful. It makes a beautiful yellow broth.
Yeah.
So I did belong to a chicken CSA that Mendocino Organics did, Adam Gaskin and Paula, and they stuffed the feet and the head into the bird for me. You could ask them to include that, and I made the best broths that year. They were really good. You're absolutely right about chicken feet, and that's the advantage of a local opportunity. In fact, when I opened this bird up, there were no giblets in it. So I was quite, kind of felt like I was cheated or something. And because what I like to do is I put the heart and the neck and all that into my broth, and I save out the liver, and these are organic livers only, and I put them in my freezer until I have a bag of chicken livers, and then I make a wonderful pate. It's got sherry and butter, and it's really just yummy, and it's so good for you. You know, liver is really a really extraordinary medicinal food when it's clean.
And as far as the chicken feet are concerned, they're also a very good treat for dogs. Cartilage, and those dogs love them. They're very, very healthy for dogs.
Do you cook them first?
No.
Raw chicken feet.
Yeah.
There you go, raw chicken feet. You thought it was a joke. Is there another one of these?
I can never understand how eating liver could be good for you, because the function of the liver is to filter out toxins. So does the toxin go into the bile, or?
The liver breaks them down, but then they leave the liver. They're not stored in
The liver's, a healthy liver self-cleans itself constantly. It's, you know, a sick liver can't anymore, and that's something, you know, that we all...
And the aged liver?
Aged liver?
Well, when you're older and aged.
Oh, well, aging liver. Very gourmet. I think as we age, you know, how we ate and what we're doing, there are certainly people doing liver cleanses and working to understand these kinds of additional opportunities in our medicinal system. You know, there's some alternative therapists in this room. I bet they could say a lot about liver and how good it is to cleanse our body. I really feel, you know, keeping our digestive tract and our gastrointestinal mucus lining healthy is absolutely important to longevity and health, and liver would be part of that.
Well, you mentioned Sally Fallon's book, about traditional societies. All traditional societies prized organ meats, the brains, the liver. They knew that they were very nutritious, and like the fish heads. If you make a soup out of fish head, you can keep the eyes and you get the protein and fat out of the brain.
Yes.
The protein and fat in the brain.
Great. We could do a whole course on traditional foods from around the world, and Patricia's absolutely right. Fish head soup is like just dynamite nutrition, and organ meats were preferred by some societies over muscle meat, to the point where, this is maybe a rumor, that some African tribes threw the muscle meat that we prize, the steaks, to their dogs and ate the organ meats themselves. And that's
They didn't eat the white meat.
They never ate the white meat. They would eat darkest meat they could find. They would eat meat close to the bone, and they would eat organ meats. And as we know, we've all read the fiction books where the heart is given to the warrior who caught the animal or whatever. It's about that sense of those being just super nutrition, really, in the most basic sense that a hunter-gatherer society could find super nutrition. Very different than us with our spirulina and our, you know, things that we've come to know are super nutrition foods. But still, chicken, super nutrition. I totally want to leave you with that. We've talked about everything except the crock pot itself, and I just want to take a minute, because that's all we have, is to just take a look at your slow cooker. I keep calling it a crock pot because I started with these in the 70s. Slow cooker is really a better name because it reminds us of slow food. And so you can get a sense of it from here. I recommend everyone have one. I don't use it every day, but I use it a lot, and I especially use it when I'm making my broths and when I'm, you know, busy. I do a lot of bean cooking too. I've taught a lot of classes on black beans over the years, and the crock pot loves beans. It's not good for green vegetables and things of that nature, but really kind of hearty foods are great in a crock pot, in a slow cooker. Potatoes and beans and meats, and you can make all kinds of stews. These books have lots of recipes, and the internet has superseded all these books because you can look up anything, and you'll find out you can make it in a slow cooker, whether it's rice with some kind of like Greek sauce or something, or Thai soup. So use your chicken up, make several kinds of soups, change your style so that you feel like you've had something different for dinner and not just eating chicken every night. I wouldn't recommend eating chicken every night. It's a great weekly treat. It's one of the most affordable, easily digestible, and easy on the earth meats because you can grow them in your backyard. They don't need a lot of grazing ground. Did anybody want to ask questions?
The degree of cooking in a slow cooker, have you looked at it solar cooking? Is it similar? Because I have a solar cooker that I do a slow cook on, but it doesn't give me the juice.
I find my solar cooker, and I do a lot of solar cooking in the summer. I'll start pretty much at spring equinox and go from spring to fall equinoxes to get the maximum sunlight. I can cook a chicken much faster than a crock pot. It seems like it takes only a couple hours. It does make juice for mine.
Okay.
I get a lot of.
So you're recommending the slower cooking in the crock pot than the solar?
No, I recommend you cook any way you can. And we're so blessed to have all these things. We were talking earlier about off-grid living. You can't really have a crock pot and use it well if you live off-grid. It takes too much electricity. It sucks your batteries dry. So how many people live off-grid here? Probably 3 or 4 of you. Yeah. So the slow cooker is not going to be your choice, but wow. So solar cooking is fun, especially if you're around and you can just walk past it and just slowly move it a little bit, in the afternoon and keep it pointed to the sun. I do a lot of solar cooking in the summer. I bake things. I've made, brownies and pizza and done all kinds of experiments in a solar oven. And that's a whole other class as well, sun oven cooking. We should do it in the summer, right? Okay, they're making you salad back there. Yeah.
Is it easier to pull the chicken off the bones when it's cooler or when it's warm?
I like it when it's warm, not too cold. If it gets icy, your hands are really uncomfortable with it. And if it's too hot, you don't want to do it either. So there's this kind of, like I had turned this off and it was down to about 120 degrees when I took the chicken out and I let it sit for a minute and I pulled it off so that it's warm and everything's still kind of, a little bit flexible. So remember, use all your bones. You don't have to use that skin if you feel kind of funny about fat, if you're into more of a low-fat diet for some reason. Don't use the skin, but take every bone, every bit of ligament tissue you can find, and to make your broth and your stock, and you'll get the benefit from all of that part of the bird. It really helps the bird to know that you used every bit of it. Yes. And say grace before your meals so that your food is really going to feed you in such a loving way. Okay, I guess I'm done, and we're going to eat. And here's what a few more chickens. I'm going to see if I can't get these to work. Oh!
Something told me to cover my face.
You did. You really were the target, weren't you? And I just get out of the way. Oh, that was. I finally hit the wall. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. I'll talk about the books. So I brought. I own a way too many slow cooker cookbooks because I taught these classes and in fact I have 7 slow cookers. It's kind of an embarrassing thing. I have a lot of books in slow cookers, so I can do that cooking show thing. If I was really set up here, I would have like 3 or 4 of these slow cookers, and I would show you the different. We would put a chicken in, we would pull it out, we would do the thing, and then you'd see the broth at the end. Okay, so anyway, this is a great book. It's got fun international recipes. I like it. Make it fast, cook it slow. I like to spend as little time as possible making the best food I can. So not spending hours on gourmet setups is something that just appeals to me personally. Some of you might love to be in the kitchen all day, and some days I do, especially if I have a friend over. So this is a great book. I'm going to to mention this book again, Nourishing Traditions. Really, it's a tome, it's a philosophy, it's more than a cookbook. It's all about the traditional foods from around the world of peoples who were very healthy. Dr. Weston Price, in the 30s, he was a dentist. He went around the world and studied the nutrition of these societies that were still eating the food of their ancestors. He taught them before Western food had come into their society. He was very interested in their teeth and their bones. And he says that these healthiest people, they ate some meat, especially near the coast, they ate a lot of fish. They ate fermented foods. All of them had some fermented food in their diet, whether it was yogurt in the Balkans or sourdough bread in Switzerland or the injera soured teff breads in Ethiopia. In Japan, they have the natto and the miso. And all over the world, there's something, sauerkraut, that is fermented, that helps the digestion, gives you the natural probiotics to keep yourself healthy. So I love this book, Nourishing Traditions.
Tammy, on the food, I just want to mention Chef Kyle from the hospital prepared the slaw, and he wanted to make sure everyone knew that it was gluten-free and used tamari rather than soy sauce.
Right. Yeah, very high quality.
Wonderful.
I had a question. You were mentioning carbs.
Uh-huh.
I tend to think that some carbs are okay, like rice. And I know that this book, Nourishing Traditions, says, soak it overnight with some vinegar or whatever.
That's right. Good point. Soaking carbs and souring your grains. Sourdough bread that's made from true sourdough with no yeast added is much more digestible. And people who think they are gluten intolerant might find out that it's actually it's not the gluten for them. It's the quick methods that our commercial breads are made, and they can eat sourdough bread. So you're right to bring that up about fermenting the grains. So grains are not like enemies, but they do need to be treated properly, and we need to watch how many we eat. I know that I'm a carb addict, so if I start on a box of cookies, someone has to help me. It's just a terrible thing. And but it doesn't work that way for me with other foods that somehow are more deeply nourishing to my body. Sugar is the carb I really want you to avoid. Yeah. And so these are a couple more simmering suppers. Is a beautiful book that goes beyond the crock pot and talks about simmering things on the stove. And for you who live out in the country, you can have that old-time homey sense of your food. Another good slow cooker book. This is a really new book, Farm to Fork, and Emmanuel Lagacé, he's a French amazing gourmet. This is the gourmet book for all of you. I'm a simple cook. This guy knows how to make it look good, and just his recipes are beautiful and yummy, and yet they're simple. He's using rutabagas, and all of his beef is grass-fed. And he adds cantaloupe to pasta. I mean, he does unusual things that you would expect a gourmet book to do, and yet it's all local and seasonal. So this is a fun book. Farm to Fork is a beautiful phrase, isn't it? Farm to Fork.
Is he the Emerald on TV?
He is. Yeah, he's the...
Crank it up and then monitor.
Yeah, right. He's kind of a wild TV personality too, but he is a good writer, or maybe someone wrote this for him. I'm not sure. But he uses all these fresh ingredients and really encourages you to go to farmers markets and get things that are seasonal and fresh. So when a strawberry's in season, it's very different than the ones we're getting now. You know the difference. I just can't wait for those strawberries. And eating seasonally gives you the best taste of everything. And you're waiting for it. You're excited. You just haven't had a strawberry every single day for the whole year. You're about ready to have strawberries, and it's kind of this excitement about food.
Are you familiar with the Ceres project in Santa Rosa? If you are, say something about how the food is good for all of us.
Ceres is the ancient Roman goddess of grain, and she was the bountiful mother that gave from the earth. So they named their project that, and I first thought, oh, this is all about bread. But actually what it is they're combining people who need food with young people who need to learn something, And so teenagers are cooking for homeless and for soup kitchen types of situations and Meals on Wheels and people who need food brought to them. And so there's this wonderful joining in, and people are donating food to that, different food bank types of situations are coming together. And so it's this beautiful hub of community that's created around food where people are getting fed. And young people are learning how to cook, which I'm really happy to hear. So, did you want to say anything more about it, Doreen?
I'm also aware that they provide meals for people with chronic illness and families of people with chronic illness. What I've heard is they try to pack the maximum nutrition in every tablespoon of food. Wow. And they have cookbooks available, lessons on weekends, classes, and it's really quite phenomenal.
And it's spread beyond Santa Rosa now.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
It's a national-wide model, I think, and many other cities are starting it.
Maybe Willits will end up with one.
It might be used for the old hospital.
It would.
Wouldn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, that'd be great.
I would love to.
Yeah. There's I work sometimes with NCO, North Coast Opportunities. They funded a lot of my early cooking ventures that I was teaching the beans and the rice because that's what was available through the program. And we need to learn how to cook dry beans from scratch. If you have a bag of dry beans, your meal costs you pennies. Whereas, go to the store and buy a jar of beans, canned beans, it's quite a bit more expensive. So anyway, that program started out with the intention of bringing good nutrition for an elderly. And I'm not sure where I was going with that, but they would be someone who might help organize a series type program. And right now they have a lot of young people who are coming into their programs and working through their programs and becoming directors of small projects and really helping our whole food systems here. Our food security and our food systems from farm to fork all needs to come together. They're working on Food Hub, which is how to connect the farmers with the users of food, whether it's an institutional situation like the hospital or a school or a restaurant, to bring them together. So Willits will have a Food Hub node probably within the next 6 months, where those people are going to be able to find each other and direct from farm to food service, probably most likely. Those are some things I know, but
Willits rocks.
Willits rocks.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The bay leaves you use, is that California bay?
This is California bay laurel. It's not the bay that we get from our friends, but they're really good. And they added,
You are dry.
Yeah, I use them dry. They're very aromatic, and you can use too many. They're very they're strong. But 3 or 4 in a big pot of soup is fine.
Can you just go pick them off the tree and use them, or do you have to do something to them?
You dry them. Pick them off the tree, and keep them in a bowl, looking nice on your counter till they feel dry, and then throw them in.
I've never used mine dry.
You've never used yours dry? I think that it helps release some of the
I
really.
just tear
the
leaves up.
And,
Right.
and use fewer.
Yes.
Maybe. Yeah.
About 2.
They're super medicinal. They're really good to just smell, and they're good to clean your sinuses out. If you want them in your food, maybe you don't look quite as strong. But, you all want more salad, or what's that thing?
We do want more
Sitting around us.
Thank you very much.